The message arrived on a Tuesday, a signal from deep space that changed everything. Humanity had wondered for centuries if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. Captain Jack Nelson stood on the bridge of the Horizon Dawn *, Earth's finest diplomatic vessel. His blue uniform was pressed perfectly, his face calm despite the pressure. The ship had been rushing toward the edge of the solar system for 3 days since the alien fleet was detected. "How much longer?" Jack asked, his voice steady. Lisa Rodriguez, the ship's communications officer, looked up from her screen. "Contact in 20 minutes, Captain." Jack nodded. Lisa was the best linguist in the fleet. If anyone could talk to these aliens, it would be her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her brown eyes focused on the incoming data. "What do we know about them?" Jack asked Paul Wright, the science officer who was studying the alien ships. Paul adjusted his glasses. "They call themselves the Velrathi. Their ships are built for speed and power. Everything about their design suggests they're hunters, not explorers." The bridge fell quiet. Everyone had seen the images. The Velrathi ships looked like predators, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Nothing like the smooth, practical design of human vessels. "We're receiving a transmission," Lisa said suddenly. "They're requesting visual contact." Jack straightened his shoulders. "Put them on screen." The main screen flickered, and everyone on the bridge gasped. The Velrathi were tall, covered in scales that shifted between dark blue and purple. Their faces had 4 yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. Claws extended from their 6-fingered hands. "Greetings," the lead Velrathi said through the translator. "I am War Commander Ktarn of the Velrathi Dominion. Who speaks for your world?" Jack stepped forward. "I am Captain Jack Nelson of Earth's United Nations. We welcome peaceful contact with your people." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Peaceful? Yes. For now." The translator couldn't hide the tone. Somewhere between amusement and hunger. Lisa watched carefully. Her job was to understand not just words, but meanings. The way Ktarn's upper eyes focused on Jack, while the lower ones scanned the bridge, told her something important. They were assessing threats, studying weaknesses. "We invite your diplomatic team to meet on our vessel," Ktarn continued, "to discuss your world's place in the galaxy." Jack and Lisa exchanged glances. This wasn't an invitation they could refuse. "We accept," Jack said. "Allow us to prepare a small team." When the screen went dark, the bridge exploded with activity. Security Officer Chris Palmer moved next to Jack. "Captain, everything about them screams predator. This is dangerous." "I know," Jack replied. "But we don't have much choice. Their ships could destroy us without trying." Later, as the small team prepared to board the shuttle, Dr. Samantha Klein handed special medical monitors to each of them. "These will track your vital signs," she explained. "If anything happens, we'll know." The shuttle journey was short but tense. As they approached the massive Velrathi flagship, Lisa studied its design. "Look at those markings," she whispered to Paul. "They look like kill counts." Paul nodded grimly. "I think they are." The shuttle docked with a soft bump. The door opened to reveal 4 Velrathi warriors, each nearly 7 feet tall, their scales shifting color in the light. "Welcome," one said, showing too many teeth. "Our leaders are eager to meet the representatives of this soft species." As they walked through the ship, Jack noticed the walls were decorated with what looked like bones and strange weapons. The message was clear. They were walking into the den of apex predators. In the main chamber, Ktarn waited on a raised platform. Other Velrathi stood nearby, studying the humans with all 4 of their eyes. Some sniffed the air, as if catching the scent of prey. "Humans," Ktarn said, leaning forward. "Tell us about your world. We are most interested in what resources you can offer the Dominion." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting. It was an assessment, and humans were being sized up as either useful servants or easy meals. The Velrathi chamber felt cold. Jack stood tall as Xarn circled the human team, sniffing occasionally. The other Velrathi watched from the shadows, their yellow eyes never blinking. "Your species is young," Xarn said. "Our scans show your world is rich with minerals, water, and biological resources. The Dominion requires tribute from all worlds in our territory." Lisa stepped forward slightly. "We came to establish friendship, not to discuss tribute." Xarn made a sound like rocks grinding together. The translator identified it as laughter. "Friendship? The galaxy is not a friendly place, small one. Species either hunt or are hunted. You lack claws, fangs, natural armor." He gestured at their bodies. "Your skin tears easily. Your bones break with little force. What do you offer that would make us see you as anything but prey?" Jack felt the tension in the room grow. This was heading toward disaster. But Lisa had been studying the Velrathi body language and saw an opportunity. "Before we discuss terms," she said carefully, "perhaps we should learn about each other's cultures, to understand what each species values." Xarn tilted his head, all four eyes focusing on her. "An unusual request, but acceptable. Our hunt scribes will share tales of Velrathi conquests while we eat." The humans were led to a large room with a long table. Strange meats and fruits were laid out. Paul quietly scanned everything with a small device before nodding that it was safe to eat. For an hour they listened to Velrathi warriors tell stories of battles and hunts across many worlds. Each tale was more violent than the last. The Velrathi clearly expected the humans to be impressed or frightened. When they finished, Xarn looked at the humans. "Now you will share tales of your greatest hunts." The human team exchanged glances. Earth hadn't had wars in decades, and hunting was mostly a sport, not a necessity. Mary Donovan, the chief engineer, cleared her throat. "On Earth, we often share stories in the evening. May I tell one now?" Xarn waved a clawed hand. "Proceed." Mary smiled slightly. "This is a story my grandmother told me when I was young, about something that happened in her small town." She began to tell a simple ghost story about an abandoned house where people heard strange noises at night, and those who entered never returned. She described how a group of children dared to investigate and found handprints on the walls that couldn't be washed away, and how shadows moved without anything casting them. As she spoke, Chris noticed something strange. The Velrathi had gone completely still. Their scales, which normally shifted colors slightly, had frozen in darker patterns. Some had pulled their upper lips back, exposing more teeth, not in aggression, but in what looked almost like fear. "And they say," Mary continued, lowering her voice, "that on certain nights you can still hear the children screaming inside those walls, even though the house burned down 20 years ago." When she finished, there was complete silence. One of the younger Velrathi made a soft clicking sound in its throat. "This happened on your world?" Xarn finally asked, his voice oddly tight. Lisa, sensing something important, nodded. "Many such things happen on Earth. We have countless stories like this." "I see," Xarn said, standing abruptly. "We will continue our discussions tomorrow. You may return to your ship for the night cycle." On the shuttle back to the Horizon Dawn Paul couldn't contain his excitement. "Did you see their reactions? I had my scanner running the whole time. Their body temperatures dropped, and their hormone levels spiked when Mary was telling that story." Jack looked thoughtful. It was just a ghost story. Why would that bother them? Lisa's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Captain, I think I know what happened. The way they told their stories. They were all factual accounts. What if the Velrathi don't understand the concept of fiction? What if they think every story we tell is true?" The team fell silent as they considered the implications. "If that's true," Chris said slowly, "then they think Earth is home to invisible, wall-walking monsters that can't be killed." Jack smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "Get the crew together. I think we just found our advantage." Back on the Horizon Dawn the crew gathered in the main meeting room. Jack stood at the front while Lisa and Paul set up their equipment. "Show them what you found," Jack said to Paul. Paul nodded and touched a screen. Images of the Velrathi appeared, with colored areas showing their body heat during Mary's ghost story. "See these blue patches? That's their blood moving away from the skin. In most predator species, that's a fear response," Paul explained. They were scared. Dr. Klein studied the data on her tablet. Their hormone levels match what we see in humans experiencing fear or stress. Their bodies were preparing for danger. Lisa stepped forward. "I believe the Velrathi don't understand fiction. Every story they told us was about real events, battles they fought, planets they conquered. When Mary told a ghost story, they thought she was describing something that really happened on Earth." The room fell quiet as everyone considered this. "So they think Earth is haunted?" Chris asked. "They think humans live on a planet with invisible monsters, ghosts, and other dangers we just accept as normal," Lisa said. "That's why they let us leave so quickly. They wanted to reconsider their approach." Jack walked to the window and looked out at the massive Velrathi ships. "We need to know more about how their minds work. Doctor, can you analyze their brain patterns from the scans?" Dr. Klein nodded. "Already working on it. Their brains are different from ours, but they process fear in similar ways. There's one interesting difference. The part of their brain that separates real from imaginary is much smaller than ours." "That explains it," Paul said excitedly. "Humans evolved to tell stories, to imagine things that never happened. It helped us plan, learn, and warn each other about dangers without experiencing them firsthand. The Velrathi might not have that ability." Jack turned back to the crew. "This could be our advantage. But we need to be careful. If they discover we're using their fear against them, they might attack." Lisa's computer beeped with an incoming message. "Captain, the Velrathi are requesting to continue negotiations, but they want to come to Earth now." Everyone exchanged nervous glances. "They want to see our home world," Chris said, his hand moving to his weapon. "To check our defenses before they attack. Or to see if the monsters from our stories are real," Mary suggested. Jack thought for a moment. "Lisa, tell them we accept. We'll take them to Earth. Paul, contact United Defense Command and explain the situation. We need them to prepare a proper welcome for our guests." As Lisa sent the message, Jack pulled her aside. "We need Earth's best storytellers, and we need to choose the stories carefully. Nothing too unbelievable, but enough to make them think twice about starting a conflict." Lisa smiled. "I know just the people to call." The next day, the human team returned to the Velrathi flagship. Sarn was waiting with 4 other high-ranking Velrathi. "We have considered your world's position," Sarn said, trying to sound confident. "The Dominion wishes to inspect Earth before finalizing our agreement." Jack nodded calmly. "We would be honored to show you our home. When would you like to depart?" "Immediately," Sarn replied. "We will take one of our scout ships." As they boarded the Velrathi vessel, Lisa noticed the aliens watching them with a new wariness. One young warrior kept looking at Mary, who had told the ghost story. The warrior's scales had darkened to a deep purple, a sign of stress. During the journey to Earth, Paul quietly recorded all Velrathi reactions and conversations. He noticed they kept weapons close at all times now, and spoke in hushed tones among themselves. "What are they saying?" Jack whispered to Lisa, who was learning their language. "They're debating whether humans have special powers," she replied softly. "Some think we control the monsters from the stories. Others think we're immune to them because we've evolved alongside them." Jack smiled slightly. "Perfect. Let's not correct them just yet." As Earth came into view on the main screen, the Velrathi fell silent. The blue planet looked peaceful and beautiful. But to the Velrathi, it was becoming something else entirely. A world of unknown horrors where the soft, clawless species somehow thrived among monsters. The Velrathi scout ship landed at the United Defense Command base in the Rocky Mountains. Snow covered the peaks around them, and the air was crisp and cold. Kazarn and 5 other Velrathi stepped out, their scales shifting to darker colors to absorb more heat. Admiral Grace Foster greeted them with a team of Earth officials. "Welcome to Earth. We have prepared rooms for you, and tonight we will host a welcome dinner." Kazarn looked around carefully, his 4 eyes taking in everything. "Your world seems peaceful, for now." As the sun began to set, the humans led their guests to a large clearing surrounded by pine trees. Logs had been placed in a circle around a fire pit. Lieutenant Eric Johnson, head of cultural relations, explained that this was a traditional Earth greeting ceremony. "Our ancestors gathered around fires to share food and stories," Eric said as he lit the fire. "We still honor this tradition for important guests." The Velrathi sat stiffly on the logs, their clawed hands never far from their weapons. Other human officials joined them, bringing food and drinks. The night grew darker, and the fire cast long shadows through the trees. After the meal, Eric nodded to an older man with gray hair. "Ben Harris is one of our most respected story keepers. He will share a traditional tale." Ben smiled warmly at the aliens. "This story comes from the northern forests of our world, where winter lasts most of the year." He began to tell the tale of the Wendigo, a creature born from human hunger that could never be satisfied. He described how it stalked through frozen forests, how its cries sounded like the wind, and how it could mimic human voices to lure its prey. "No matter how many times it is killed," Ben said in a low voice, "the Wendigo always returns when the winter is longest and food is scarce." The Velrathi sat completely still. One younger warrior's claws had dug deep into the wooden log. Next, a woman named Kate Miller told a story about zombies, explaining how Earth had dealt with creatures that could not be killed because they were already dead, and how their bite would turn others into more of their kind. "Our ancestors learned to destroy the brain," she said casually. "That's the only way to stop them permanently." With each story, Paul recorded the Velrathi reactions. Their body temperatures continued to drop, and their scales darkened further. Kazarn tried to appear unaffected, but his upper eyes kept scanning the dark forest beyond the firelight. During a break, Kazarn pulled aside one of his science officers. "Scan this area again for life forms," he ordered quietly in their language. Lisa, standing nearby, pretended not to understand. "Already done," the science officer replied. "There are many small creatures in the forest, but nothing matching the beings in their stories. Yet," Kazarn added, "could these humans be controlling these creatures, keeping them away while we are here?" The science officer's scales rippled with uncertainty. "Unknown. Their biology shows no signs of mind control abilities, but they survive here despite having no natural defenses." When the break ended, Chris told a story about human soldiers who continued fighting even after losing limbs or suffering fatal wounds because their duty and love for home gave them strength beyond physical limits. "That is why Earth has never been successfully invaded," Chris finished, looking directly at Kazarn. "Our will to protect our home has overcome every threat." Later that night, in their assigned quarters, the Velrathi held a private meeting. Kazarn paced back and forth. "These humans are more dangerous than we thought," he said. "They live on a world filled with undine creatures, shapeshifters, and invisible hunters, yet they talk about these threats as if they are minor inconveniences." The youngest warrior spoke up. "What if they've made some kind of truce with these monsters? What if they can command them?" Kazarn looked out the window at the quiet Earth night. "Tomorrow we will learn more, but be prepared for anything, and do not go anywhere alone." Meanwhile, in the command center, the human team watched the Velrathi through hidden cameras, smiling as their plan worked perfectly. Morning came with a light snowfall. Kazarn sent an urgent message to the Velrathi High Command, reporting everything they had learned about Earth and its inhabitants. He requested more ships, just in case. The humans offered to take their guests on a tour of nearby cities. As their transport flew over a movie studio, one of the Velrathi spotted people in strange makeup and costumes walking between buildings. "What are those creatures?" The warrior asked, pointing to actors dressed as aliens for a science fiction film. Admiral Foster smiled. Just some of Earth's many visitors. We have good relations with several species. The Velrathi exchanged worried glances. These humans had alliances with other beings, possibly the monsters from their stories. Later, they visited a military training facility where soldiers demonstrated survival skills. One man showed how he could hold his breath underwater for over 3 minutes. Another walked across hot coals without pain. A woman lifted weights that seemed too heavy for her small frame. All humans can learn these skills, Eric explained. Our bodies are weaker than yours, so we train to overcome our limitations. Sarn watched with growing concern. These soft creatures were far more dangerous than they appeared. Back at the base, Lisa and Paul met with Jack to discuss their observations. The Velrathi are definitely scared, Paul said, showing data from his scanners. Their stress hormones are through the roof, and Sarn sent a message to their fleet this morning. What did it say? Jack asked. Lisa checked her notes. My translation isn't perfect, but he called humans prey with hidden fangs and requested backup. Jack looked worried. That could mean they're planning to attack. We need to push them toward peace without starting a war. Dr. Klein joined them, carrying her tablet. I've been studying Velrathi psychology based on our data. They respect strength above all else. Right now, they fear us because they think we control monsters. But if they learn the truth, they might see us as liars, not warriors. Lisa finished. What if we don't tell them our stories are fiction, but don't confirm they're true either? Jack considered this. We need to make them think attacking Earth would be too costly, no matter what. That afternoon, Admiral Foster invited Sarn to observe a special demonstration. They stood on a platform overlooking a field where human volunteers waited. On Earth, we train for all possible dangers, Foster explained. Watch. Below them, a woman named Kelly ran across the field as others threw obstacles in her path. She jumped over barriers, crawled under wires, and climbed a tall wall using just her hands and feet. Our bodies may seem weak, Foster said, but we can adapt to any challenge. Next, a man named Dan was buried under heavy snow. Minutes passed. The Velrathi leaned forward, certain the human had died. Then the snow moved and Dan emerged, brushing ice from his shoulders. Cold doesn't stop us for long, Foster said casually. The demonstrations continued, humans walking through fire, surviving electric shocks, and even one man who could dislocate his joints to escape from ropes. When they returned to the base, Sarn requested a private meeting with Jack and Lisa. Your people are unusual, Sarn said carefully. You have no natural weapons, yet you thrive on a world filled with dangers. How? Lisa smiled slightly. Humans have always faced threats greater than ourselves. We learn to survive by understanding fear, not just feeling it. And the creatures from your stories? Sarn asked, trying to sound casual. The ones that cannot die, that hunt in darkness. Jack met the alien's four-eyed gaze steadily. What happens in Earth's shadows stays in Earth's shadows. But know this, those beings fear humans more than humans fear them. That night, Sarn received a message. The Velrathi fleet had arrived in Earth's solar system. 6 massive warships now orbited Mars, awaiting his command. Sarn stared at the ceiling, his scales shifting between colors as he tried to decide the best course of action. Attack these strange humans, or offer peace to a prey species that somehow controlled monsters. Earth's defense systems detected the Velrathi fleet as soon as it entered the solar system. In the command center, Admiral Foster showed Jack and his team the 6 massive warships now orbiting Mars. They could reach Earth in hours, Foster said grimly. Our weapons might take down 1 or 2 ships, but not all 6. Jack looked at the holographic display. They haven't attacked yet. That means Sarn is still unsure, or waiting for the right moment, Chris added, his hand resting on his weapon. Lisa studied the latest reports from their Velrathi guest quarters. They've been communicating constantly with their fleet, Something big is coming. An hour later, a message arrived. The Supreme Hunter of the Velrathi Dominion would arrive on Earth for a final meeting. This was their leader, the one who made all important decisions for their species. "This is either very good or very bad," Jack said. "They wouldn't send their leader into danger," Lisa reasoned. "I think they want to evaluate us personally before making a decision." Admiral Foster called an emergency meeting with Earth's United Defense Council. They had 12 hours to prepare for the most important diplomatic event in human history. "We need one final push," Foster told Jack's team. "Something that will convince them that peace is their best option." Dr. Klein had been working through the night. She brought a small device to the meeting. "I've been studying everything we know about Velrathi psychology. I believe I've created something that will work." "What is it?" Jack asked. "A compilation of human fears," she explained. "Not just stories, but concepts. The idea of being forgotten, of being alone in an endless void, the fear of something watching you in the dark, always just behind you." Lisa's eyes widened. Concepts they've never encountered before. "Exactly," Klein said. "All woven into a presentation that will make them understand what humans are truly capable of imagining." The Supreme Hunter arrived at sunset. His ship was smaller but more ornate than the others, covered in markings that Lisa recognized as victory symbols. He was larger than the other Velrathi, his scales a deep purple that almost looked black. 8 warriors accompanied him, each armed with weapons that could cut through steel. The meeting took place in a large hall. On one side stood Earth's representatives, led by Admiral Foster and Jack's team. On the other stood the Supreme Hunter, Klarn, and their warriors. "We have examined your world," the Supreme Hunter began, his voice deeper than any Velrathi they had heard before. "You are an unusual species, physically weak, yet you survive among great dangers." Jack stepped forward. "The Velrathi judge strength by claws and fangs. Humans have different strengths." "So we have observed," the Supreme Hunter said. "Starn tells me you live alongside creatures that cannot die, that hunt in darkness, that take the form of others. Yet you show no fear." The room fell silent. This was the moment that would decide everything. Lisa moved beside Jack. "Supreme Hunter, would you like to know why humans don't fear these things?" The alien leader tilted his head, curious. "Because what exists in our world is nothing compared to what exists in our minds," Lisa said. She nodded to Dr. Klein, who activated her device. Images and words filled the room, projected onto all walls. The deepest human fears given form, not just monsters or death, but abstract concepts like eternal loneliness, the loss of self, the feeling of being watched by something you can't see. The Velrathi warriors stepped back, their scales shifting rapidly between colors in extreme stress. Even the Supreme Hunter's 4 eyes widened. "This," Lisa explained calmly, "is what humans create when we want to scare ourselves. For fun." Jack stepped forward. "The stories you heard around our fire, those were entertainment for human children. The true horrors we can imagine would drive other species mad." The Supreme Hunter stared at them, then turned to Xarn. "You were right to call me here," he said finally. "These are not prey." The next morning, humans and Velrathi met again. The mood was different. The Supreme Hunter no longer looked at the humans as prey, but as equals, or perhaps something else entirely. "We have made our decision," the Supreme Hunter announced. "The Velrathi Dominion offers Earth an alliance, not conquest." A wave of relief passed through the human delegation. Admiral Foster stepped forward with a prepared treaty document. "We accept your offer of alliance," she said. "Both our worlds will benefit from peace." As they signed the treaty, Lisa noticed something interesting. The Velrathi warriors stood differently now, their posture less aggressive, more respectful. They kept glancing at the humans with what looked almost like awe. After the ceremony, the Supreme Hunter asked to speak privately with Jack and Lisa. "I must know," he said when they were alone. "The beings from your stories, they are not real, are they?" Lisa hesitated, then decided honesty was now the best path. No, Supreme Hunter. Humans have the ability to create stories that never happened. We call it fiction. The alien leader's scales shifted to a blue color they hadn't seen before. So you invented these horrors? From nothing. Jack nodded. Humans have always told stories. It helps us prepare for dangers, understand our fears, and teach each other. The Supreme Hunter was quiet for a long moment. In all our conquests across many star systems, we have never encountered a species that could do this. The Velrathi cannot create what is not real. We can only speak of what we have seen or done. That's why our stories frightened you, Lisa realized. You had no concept of fiction. Yes, the Supreme Hunter admitted. When we heard your tales of unstoppable monsters and invisible threats, we believed Earth must be the most dangerous world in the galaxy. And yet you soft creatures not only survived but seemed unafraid. He turned his 4 eyes to them. But now I understand that the true power of humans is not in your bodies, but in your minds. You create terrors beyond reality, then face them willingly, for entertainment. That's one way to look at it, Jack said, trying not to smile. This ability gives you strength we cannot match, the Supreme Hunter continued. If these are the horrors you create for pleasure, what would you create if truly threatened? The alliance between Earth and the Velrathi grew stronger over the following months. Trade began, and cultural exchanges were established. Lisa headed the program, teaching Velrathi about human stories and learning about their hunting traditions. Paul spent much time with young Velrathi warriors, explaining the concept of fiction. At first, they struggled to understand, but slowly they began to grasp the idea. 6 months after the treaty signing, Lisa visited the Velrathi Cultural Center on Earth. She found Paul sitting with a group of Velrathi younglings in a dimly lit room. And some say, Paul whispered, that on nights like this, when the moons align, you can still hear the spaceship's engines humming beneath the lake, waiting to rise again. The young Velrathi sat perfectly still, their scales dark with fear and excitement. One of them noticed Lisa and beckoned her over. Is this true? The youngling asked in a hushed voice. Did this really happen? Lisa smiled. What do you think? The youngling's scales rippled with colors. I think it is a story. Not real, but could be real. Exactly, Lisa said. That's fiction. As she watched Paul continue his ghost story, the young Velrathi hanging on his every word, Lisa felt a deep satisfaction. The apex predators of the galaxy now gathered eagerly to be frightened by human tales. On the observation deck above, the Supreme Hunter stood with Jack and Admiral Foster. Your stories have changed us, he admitted. My warriors now ask for human tales before hunts. They say facing imaginary fears makes real dangers seem smaller. Jack nodded. That's why humans have always told stories. They help us be brave. Perhaps, the Supreme Hunter said, watching his younglings below, being the apex predator is not just about having the sharpest claws, but also about having the boldest imagination.